300 days of Minecraft hardcore in an ocean-only world. Now, I'm not going to keep you for too long during this intro. I just hope you guys go on to enjoy this video because it was a ton of work and we did a lot of really big builds. Before we jump into this video, I want to thank today's sponsor, that subscribe button. Yeah, that's right. Can you guys go ahead and hit that? We're on our way to 1 million subs. If you guys go on to enjoy this video, make sure you smash that like button as well. Now, let's get into it. Day 301, we're back on the grind. And speaking of grind, I noticed the mob grinder's getting a little bit full. But on my way over to the mob grinder, I heard some footsteps coming from the house. Turned out to be a traveling merchant. Been a long time since I've seen one of these guys. I was hoping that maybe he'd be selling some podzol. I don't know how to say it. Regardless, the dookie grass. Which of course, because I'm the luckiest Minecrafter alive, he didn't sell that. But he was selling some ice, which I can actually use in the nether for some fast travel later. So I bought as much as I could, which wasn't very much. So I'm gonna have to wait for his cooldown. I also bought and planted a new flower for chickpea. Speaking of chickpea, it's about time I hold up my end of the bargain. In my last 300 days of ocean survival, I said the most liked comment in that video would be able to name the actual volcano I made in 300 days. And that name is Mount Chickpea by Dubstep 2009. This name was honestly suggested a lot, but nonetheless, I flew all the way over to the volcano and dubbed the mountain Chickpea. And I dubbed it Mount Chickpea. Afterwards, I realized it would only be suiting to be able to actually take Chickpea all the way to the mountain. And I know a lot of people are getting worried about him dying in the chicken forest anyway, so I wrangled him up and threw him in the brown pearl and set sail. After arriving, I wasn't going to just leave him stranded. Naturally, I don't want him to just float out in the ocean. So I built him a little chair so that he could be able to stay safe. But the sun was setting and it was time to say my goodbyes, so I went home and slept. Day 302. I started off the day by cleaning out the mob grinder finally. To be honest, this thing really sucks compared to the one I made in the Void World video, so definitely gonna be working on this thing later on. But for now, I'll just at least set up some chests and some hoppers to clean up the mob loot. Speaking of mob grinder though, I got a lot of mob trash that could actually just turn into stonks. So I grabbed all my rotten flesh so that I could be able to sell it and get some of that green, because I want to try to buy more ice off the wandering trader, but he's trying to sneak away from paradise. So I boated all the way over to him just to find out that he's still not selling any ice. And for that, I decided to take one of his llamas. This llama will now also be the captain of the brown pearl. So naturally, I was going to give him a name tag, but I found out that none of my librarians that survive Z-Day sell any name tags. So I figured with some quick paper trades, I'd be able to level him up in no time. But like always, I'm trying to get the best deal. So I sent my librarian in the transformation room to get clapped. But again, the iron golems are spawning like crazy. So I finished off the day by cleaning out the house. Day 303. I returned to the Shake Shack to find my librarian not zombified and in fact just suffocating in the wall. Turns out the minecart merged with the boat and my zombie Fletcher that was inside the boat apparently got suffocated in the wall as well. If there's one thing I'm certain of, it's that I'm getting pretty tired of dealing with this villager setup. But for now, back to leveling up my librarian. And he didn't sell me name tags. So I'm gonna go ahead and give up on trying to name the llama for now. And instead, I began building a new giant platform that I was gonna use for the new villager house, because it's about time I make an OP villager transformation room trading hall thing. But after a bit of building, I was running low on materials, and most importantly, the sun was going down. So on day 304, it was time to go down to the mines. But first, I figured maybe I'll grab the beacon, because I thought it'd be a good idea to be able to use some haste while I'm mining. That is until I got down there and set up the beacon, and I forgot that it needs to be able to have direct access to sunlight. Anyways, after a bit of mining, I realized I could use some sticky pistons for this build. It would actually come in handy. But the only way to be able to get slimes in this world is to find a slime chunk below Y level 40. And I figured since I needed some stone and the easiest way to find slime chunks would be to just mine out a giant area, I figured I would use all of day 305 mining as well. Day 306, we're finally on the surface and breathing some fresh air. It's finally time to finish building this platform. And luckily, when I'm building in fast forward mode like this, it's super easy. Afterwards, I figured I'd check on the wandering trader to see if he'll finally sell me more ice, and he didn't. And for that, he's gonna pay with his life. Day 307, looked out the window and realized I forgot to put my beacon back. After doing that, it was time to build the new villager trading hall. I wanted to try to keep it to the Blackstone theme that I've been doing for all my builds. So I spent the entire day just building up a simple floor plan. That is until I realized the blocks were flipped and I used basalt as the accent block instead of using it as the main block. I mean, I could live with it, but honestly, no, I can't. That's a lie. It just looks terrible. So I started tearing it all down. But I also realized I only had enough basalt to cover the entire front. At least it's looking better. Day 308. I made my way down to the mines in hopes of maybe a slime spawning. But honestly, there was just a bunch of baddies down there. And after giving them the hands, I figured I'd extend the tunnel a bit. Afterwards, I made my way into the nether and mined tons of basalt. Like a lot of basalt. Because this is going to be a pretty big house. I also spent most of day 309 punching rocks. Day 310 to 321. Now this was a very long and tedious process, so it better pay out. I'll also try to summarize it and make it as quick as possible for you guys. I tore down all the blackstone and replaced it with basalt. It's already looking a lot better. Then I thought it'd be a pretty cool idea to start doing a pattern on the wall. So I spent all of day 311 on that. I just pretty much experimented with the design a little bit and until I came up with this really cool looking pattern. Day 312, spent the day experimenting with pistons. And I realized it would work totally fine without the sticky piston. So all that mining for a slime chunk's kind of for naught. Day 313 and 314. I dug out a trench inside the house where I'm going to have the clapper running around and started preparing all the locations for my villagers to stand on pistons. It's honestly not turning out too pretty, but I'm sure it'll work fine. At the end of day 315, I was interrupted by a zombie that spawned in the Shake Shack that was trying to get a late night snack on all my villagers. Luckily, we only had one casualty, so that wasn't too bad. On day 316, I brewed up some potions of weakening and then fed him the golden apples so that he could be able to turn back into a villager. And now back to the villager trading hall. I spent the rest of the day 316 finishing up with all the pistons that I was going to need for all the villagers. But to do that, I was going to need to chop down some trees because I ran out of wood. Day 317, all the pistons were finally set up. And it didn't seem like I really got too much done today. I pretty much just worked on the interior a bit until it was the end of the day. And I realized that my zombie transformed and fell through the floor like always. So I figured this would be a good opportunity to experiment. So on day 318, I lured my librarian out of the water and tried to get him into the trading hall. That is until he just ran back into the Shake Shack. But that's the beauty of minecarts. So I forced him to take a ride right over to his forever hole. I mean home. But like always, he wasn't really working with me. And the sun was setting, so after a quick nap on day 319, I wrangled him into his home and I was testing out the piston. Looks like it's functioning totally fine. Afterwards, I spent the rest of the day moving over all the villagers I was going to need for all my trades. Day 320. But it was time to move the clapper. And since it's daylight and I can't have him running around naked, so I gave him some clothes to protect himself from the sun. Afterwards, I prepared the tunnel that I was going to have to lure him into and run through. And with everything set up, the chase began. Honestly, it wasn't that bad. I'm not going to try to make it dramatic. But shortly after getting him stuck, his helmet broke. And now this is dramatic, and it started making me panic. And I even almost gave him my netherite helmet. Luckily, right before doing that, I realized I had a water bucket. So I splashed him in the face and cooled him off. But that's also when I realized that zombies were taller than 2 blocks, which completely ruined the design of this farm. I was using trapdoors to prevent the villagers from running out of their little holes. So on day 321, I gave the clapper a fresh iron helmet, and then had the realization that I could just use slabs above the trapdoors, so the clapper can freely roam around in his trench, and then my villagers can't escape. So it was time to finally test it out. I sent my librarian down and popped him back up as a zombie, and it actually worked, so that paid off. Honestly, I'm a little bit impressed. But I was also going to need some golden apples, so I went to go chop down some trees and get some more. And then finished off the day by curing my librarian. Day 322 to 323. Continued to work on the trading hall, and I decided to call it the Trader Tower because I wanted to turn it into a giant skyscraper full of hard workers, even though it's kind of just turning into a giant prison. But at the end of day 323, before going to bed, I noticed there was something out in the water. Well, something other than just my banished cartographer, and it turned out to be a bee, which kind of confused me because I didn't think I would be able to get a bee in this world. That is until I looked over at my tree farm and noticed that when one of my oak trees grew, it spawned a beehive, which apparently is only like a 2% chance of that ever even happening. So on day 324, I went over to the Brown Pearl just to find out that Captain Llama was gone. So that was a little bit disappointing. It didn't really make any sense, but I didn't have much time because I gotta go save a bee from getting lost in the ocean. After putting him on a lead, I drug him all the way back home to his nest. After returning home, one of the bees with some butter on his butt tried to escape. So I realized I should probably grab some glass and block it off with a flower in there because I didn't really have time to deal with them just yet. I'll make them a better enclosure later. Day 325 to 330. I expanded the Trader Tower a lot, like 4 floors a lot, which expanding it wasn't really the hardest thing. I just had this bright idea of trying to mirror the pattern all the way at the bottom, which I thought would look pretty cool. And it did, but it was a ton of work and it took way too much time going all the way down and up, trying to remember how it looked. And then the last thing I had to do was slap a roof on it and do a bit of accent. And honestly, I kind of like how big and intimidating this thing is. Also at the end of day 330, to celebrate the success of the build, I figured why not? I zombified my librarian again. That is until I realized I still don't have any apples. So on day 331, I decided it's time to invest into another farmer so I could just buy some apples and not have to chop down all the trees, since I'm going to be needing a lot of these things for all the transformations I'm going to be doing. After selling him some potatoes just to lock in his trades, it was time to ship him off to the trading hall. But like always, he wasn't cooperating with me because he knew his fate was that he was going to become a zombie. That or he just really didn't like the hole I was putting him in because he he kept running into a different one. Either way, it works for me. I mean, as long as he's sitting in a hole, it doesn't matter. After blocking him off, I cleaned up all the rails and began trading with him until he sold me some apples. Then it was time to get zombified. Now that my apple problem is solved, I was gonna have to prepare a lot of potions of weakness. So I tried to farm a bunch of brown mushrooms, but apparently you can't plant mushrooms on a regular dirt block, so that's disappointing. But on day 332, I decided to head into the nether because brown mushrooms spawn everywhere in there. So I flew to an open area and tried bone mailing some mushrooms, but after 2 stacks of bone meal, I just accepted the fact that this just wasn't gonna work. So I was left with no other choice but to fly around and gather all the mushrooms I was gonna use. But now that we're back in the overworld, we're brewing up tons of potions. So now I'm not gonna have to worry about these for at least a while. I went to go check on my farmer, and sure enough, he was zombie. He was zombie. So I figured I'd dunk my Fletcher down there so then I could start working on finally getting that OP 1 stick for 1 emerald trade that I've always been dreaming of. Day 333. I feel like I need a vacation from all these villagers. So I decided to go work on the potato farm a bit, washed them all down into the hoppers, and then replanted them. Afterwards, I decided I was getting tired of seeing the banished cartographer floating around in the ocean all alone. Honestly, it was making me feel bad. So I banished him to the volcano instead. This way, Chickpea won't be lonely, and now I don't have to look at him anymore. Day 334. I started off the day by clearing out the mob grinder, which actually reminded me that I needed to fix this thing. So I went over to the bamboo farm and cleaned it out so I could finally make some scaffoldings. After trying to remember how these things work, we were finally on the way up. Honestly, I don't really trust these things, and it's terrifying using them. And I know it's gonna sound dumb, but my goal was to try to wrap a layer around the entire mob grinder, just in case if there was any sort of like light leaks that was making it so that mobs weren't spawning, but we'll see if it works. Day 335. Finally time to make an enclosure for my bees. But when I went to go move some chicken graves, they were kind of already gone. I don't really know what happened here, but someone desecrated my chicken graves. Regardless, I built out a small platform, and I know a lot of the OGs from my original hardcore series is gonna like this. I decided to make their enclosure a glass bubble. So type hashtag bubblegang down in the comments if you're a real OG. After finishing the dome up, I ended the day by building a tiny little oak tree inside their enclosure, where I will be... That was kind of cringy, I'm not gonna lie. But that's where I'm going to be hanging their hive. Day 336. Speaking of that hive, it's time to move it. Afterwards, I had the bright idea of grabbing a bunch of flowers from the iron farm, since, you know, all the iron golems would just keep dropping them. And since there's just way too many, I might as well just burn the rest. Oh my god, I just burnt my fireworks. Anyways, since also the iron farm is overflowing with iron, I figured I'd just turn all those ingots into blocks so I could actually make another beacon on the other side of my base, since the distance on these things kind of suck. Day 337. I started off the day by checking on my Fletcher to see if he's giving me any good discounts. Honestly, I couldn't really remember what the deal was he was offering me before, so I figured just in case I would turn my cartographer into a Fletcher, so he'll have some fresh new trades. Afterwards, I decided to head over to the gold farm in the nether. But I forgot I haven't broken the bedrock yet, so I still needed an ender pearl just to get on the roof. So after coming back with that ender pearl, I just popped right through. And then I set up to break the bedrock. And then I kind of missed the spot I was supposed to break. But second time's the charm, and I got it. If you guys didn't know how this works, I actually made a whole video about breaking entire chunks worth of bedrock. Pretty awesome. Go check it out. After successfully making that hole, though, it's time to go to the top of the gold farm because I'm going to AFK for the rest of the day. Because on day 338, it's time to head on down, but I might have made a mistake. My game was lagging like crazy because there were so many items at XP just waiting at the bottom. It was honestly just too crazy. I mainly just wanted to come here so I could stockpile a bunch of gold, so I could have it for all the golden apples I'm going to be using. But then I also realized that my pickaxe and shovel were getting a bit low, so I figured I'd just AFK for most of the day 438 so that I can mend them up with all that juice. Day 339, we're back at home, but not for very long because we're heading back into the nether because I'm going to try to farm some wither skulls so that I could spawn the wither and get another nether star. Another nether. So after beating down a bunch of bony cheeks, we finally got all the skulls that we needed, and luckily it didn't take nearly as long this time. Day 340, we're heading over to the stronghold because I wanted to hop into the end to fight this wither, because if you didn't know, you can actually clap the wither boss without even having to look at it, by pretty much just suffocating it in bedrock, that is. Or you could just start smacking it around like I do to make it go by faster. After getting home with our new nether star, I finished off the day by making the new platform for the beacon. Day 341, we're starting off the day by finally making that other beacon. Honestly, now that I have an iron and emerald beacon, I definitely want to actually continue this and try to get all types of beacons. Afterwards, I went to go check on my villagers. The new Fletcher was offering a better deal, but if I want to get those OP trades, they're gonna have to get zombified some more. So back down they go. Day 342, decided that since I'm not really using the Shake Shack for my villagers anymore, I might as well repurpose this beautiful building, and so I turned it into the brew house, where I can have all my brew stands and set up some chests and barrels. I definitely like the way the place turned out. Day 343, 343. We're back to checking on our Fletcher, and the deals are still terrible. And for that, more zombification. Afterwards, I decided I finally wanted to build another base. I've always liked the idea of having bases in different dimensions, in case you ever really need something while you're there. So I spent the next 6 days working on this base. I started out by clearing out all the trees that are right next to my portal, which actually took a long time because when you chop down the trees, then you gotta actually break all the wart stuff because it doesn't just decay. Then I began the process of terraforming all the land. I also wanted to make the floor of this house out of red stained glass. Since it's floating above lava, I felt like it'd be pretty fitting. Then began the house building process. I didn't want it to be too big and fancy, just beautiful enough to really stand out in the nether, you know? But honestly, I'm pretty happy with the way this thing turned out. But on day 339, I was getting ready to leave when I realized that my portal wasn't centered to the house. So I decided to move it. But then I realized I didn't have any flint and steel to relight it, or at least I thought I didn't at the time. So I gathered over a stack of gravel from an island. Somehow I didn't get a single flint from it, and I took all that gravel home and decided to shovel it there. But somehow I still didn't get any flint, which was pretty triggering. And honestly, I don't know why the Minecraft gods are punishing me. It is until I realized that I actually did still have a flint and steel on me. It was just inside my shulker box. So now I get why the gods hate me. Day 350. I have a huge project coming up soon that I'm going to need a ton of sponges for. So I grabbed my last underwater breathing potion and flew out to a fresh ocean monument. After arriving, I wanted to find the Elder Guardian as fast as possible before getting miner fatigue. But instead, I actually found a room full of sponges. I didn't even know these things existed. So I tried to mine as many as I could before getting that miner's fatigue, but I wasn't able to grab too many. So I'll definitely be back later to get more. But for now, I can't just leave this thing without slaying an Elder Guardian. So I swam through this thing, getting more and more lost until I finally found the behemoth. And after a couple close calls, the deed was done, and it was time to escape and head home. Day 351. For some reason, this is where my game audio cuts out for the rest of the video. I'm not entirely sure. But either way, I'm brewing up more potions of water breathing. Because like I said, it's a pretty huge project, and I'm going to need a lot of sponges for it. Honestly, I don't know why I'm trying to keep it a secret. I mean, it's literally in the thumbnail. I'm trying to make a giant underwater dome. And after finding that sponge room, I was determined to go back and try to get as many as I can. So after brewing up some potions, I flew back over. And I quickly swam inside, and luckily this time, I didn't even get miner's fatigue until I was already on my way out. Day 352. I realized I never really moved my book boy that sells mending. And since he's pretty important, I figured I'd move him over to the trader tower so I could keep him safe, and I can always make sure I'm getting the best deals from him. But like always, typical villagers not cooperating. But for some reason, he kept running in and out of a hole, and I eventually just trapped him. And afterwards, I realized that I was running out of potions of weakening. So I ended the day by brewing up enough to last me for a while. Day 353. Since I'm going to be making an underwater dome completely out of glass, I'm going to need to cook up a lot of sand. So I spent the entire day of 453 just robbing little islands. Day 354. I've had some weird obsession with wanting to mindlessly mine for trying to find that slime chunk. But I figured before going all the way down there, just to make it easier, I should try getting efficiency 5 on my pickaxe, since I'm still a pleb and somehow still only have efficiency 3. So I went over to the Shake Shack brew house thing to give my librarian some work and then take it away and give it back until he finally gave me what I wanted. I figured that efficiency is a pretty common trade to get, or so I thought, because it took all day just to get him to sell me an efficiency 3 book. So I bought 2 of them and combined them into an efficiency 5 book and slapped that on my pickaxe. Day 355 to 357, spent the entire time down in the mines. I pretty much spent all of day 355 mining until I said screw it and finally dug a hole all the way to the surface so that I could set up a beacon with haste. It was definitely worth it because it made mining way easier. So after mining tons of rocks, it was just a waiting game to see if I'll ever get a slime in this world. If you guys have any idea of how to make this easier, comment down below and let me know. Day 358 to 369. It's time to head in the nether, where I was greeted by a witch trying to get frisky. But that's not what I'm here for. I wanted to create a wither skull farmer because I want this world to be super OP and just have beacons everywhere. And I've made one of these farms ages ago, and they definitely help a lot, but it's also insanely time consuming to make. First 2 days, I pretty much just spent the entire time just flattening out a giant runway so that I could have all the room I need for this thing. Then I had to place slabs just everywhere in the fortress so that withers won't spawn anywhere inside but the farm. I feel like placing all these slabs will really ruin my sanity during this 100 days. Afterwards, I wanted to place a roof on top of this beast so that I don't have to worry about gas or blaze shooting at me. And with all this mining, I had to make sure to take a break and heal my pickaxe at the XP farmer, because I also had to mine a ton of netherrack to fully enclose this thing by building a bunch of walls all the way around it. After that, the last thing I had to do was make a long runway all the way down the middle of it so I could run through it and lure all the withers to the end. But after all that, it was finally done. On day 370, I spent the entire day just running up and down this thing trying to farm a bunch of withers, and I managed to get 5 skulls in a day, which ain't too shabby. But I think there must be some area inside this fortress that's spawning withers, because I feel like I remember this thing being being more OP, but that's for another day. Day 371, things got pretty sweaty and heated during that build, so I went and took a shower. But I also forgot Minecraft was open, so on day 372, we're heading over to the stronghold because it's time to clap another wither. Man, this never gets old. But honestly, it's because I forgot my beacon down in the mines, and I didn't farm all those wither skulls for nothing, so I'd rather just make a new beacon. For the rest of day 372, I was flying around the ocean trying to slay drowns because I wanted to craft a conduit. But after slaying drowned after drowned and the sun was setting, so on day 373, we're back at it with beating some drowns. But after pretty much spending the entire day of not getting a single nautilus shell, I kind of just accepted the fact that this might not ever happen. But at the end of the day, I was reminded by some turtles that I could actually use their eggs to create a farmer. So this might be a goal for 500 days. Day 374, back at home. And I noticed that there was another wandering trader that showed up. So I made my way over to him, and he actually sells podzol. Oh my gosh, I can finally have grass. I quickly grabbed my emeralds and bought some. Afterwards, I walked into the trader tower, and it turns out that 2 of my villagers became zombies. Not entirely sure how or why, but all right. Oh yeah, and you better believe that I grabbed one of his llamas to be the captain of the Brown Pearl. And this time I was definitely going to name him so he won't despawn. So I had to level up my librarian so that he could sell me some name tags, so that I could just give him a temporary name, because I actually want one of you guys to name him. So the most liked name in the comments section will be the winner, and I'll give him that name in 500 days. But for now, his temporary name will be Waraps Kaj, which if you know, you know. If you don't get the joke, then well, I guess. Day 375 to 399. Ooh, this is a long time coming. I started off the day by planting my dookie grass. I really hope this stuff spreads. But now it's time to begin the long, tedious process of building the underwater dome. I barely squeezed this build in time because naturally when you're working underwater, the entire process is literally in slow motion. But I also have a really OP hardcore world where I built tons of underwater stuff, so I'm pretty familiar with the process. But it still took a while to shake off all the rust. But after terraforming the land, I mapped out a giant circle twice. Okay, maybe 3 times because I messed up the circle, all right? But then I had to lay all the glass, which took forever. Partly because I also ran out of glass and had to wait for some of it to finish cooking. But that wasn't even the worst part. I had over 20 sponges, and getting rid of all the water still took forever. But it was all worth it because I think underwater builds look absolutely amazing. But I also wanted to build this for you guys. Think about it like it's your own little base. I plan on adding things and customizing it based off your guys' suggestions and comments. So think of some customizations that I can make to this in 500 days. Oh yeah, and day 400. Time for some of that B-roll. I hope you guys enjoyed this last 100 days. It was a ton of work and a lot of fun. So make sure to like the video so that I can know you guys want another 100 days. And don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.